What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with an update on recent sales over at ComicLink. And for those of you who are not Patreon supporters, I did put out a Patreon exclusive video that talked about the issues over at ComicLink. They had what was apparently a hack where the entire website crashed, and if you happen to be on ComicLink at the wrong time, you had some pop-up viral software downloaded to your computer. I know several folks that it happened to, and they had to get their computers cleaned up from the hack. And ComicLink has released nothing, no information about it. They're just acting like it's business as usual. David over at Comic Book Investments, another great YouTube channel covering the comic book industry, had a lengthy video about it, so you can go look it up there. I made a video only for Patreon supporters just because I didn't really feel comfortable legally talking about it. But David had no qualms whatsoever covering it, so go over there to Comic Book Investments to check it out. But anyway, the website's up and running, and a bunch of key issues sold, and I covered 9.8 graded books, but obviously they have every single grade out there, and there was a lot of really awesome books that sold for very reasonable prices in this last auction. And if you guys like this information, let me know in the comments below. I could do a part 2. This mainly covers early alphabetically covered books that have already closed. There's still a bunch that have not closed yet. So if you like this content, let me know in the comments, and I'll make a part 2 covering the second half of the alphabet in terms of sales. But this is going to be pretty Spider-Man heavy. But there's a bunch of other comic book heroes that I'm going to cover in terms of key issues, and I wanted to go ahead and dig right in. So let's start off with Spider-Man Comics. The first one we've got is Amazing Spider-Man number 149. This is from 1975, and this was a 9.8 with white pages. This is the first appearance of the Spider-Man clone, Origin and Death of the Jackal. And so this is kind of an early book that is kind of an interesting book because the concept of Spider-Man clones weaves its way all throughout different Spider-Man books, including the recent Miles Morales clone story. So the fact that this is the very first Spider-Man clone book has some appeal, and the price reflected that. It sold for $3,176. So not many of these on the census, and this price, all of these prices do not include the 3% buyer's premium that ComicLink charges to the winning bidder. So keep that in mind. They charge 3% on top of this final sales price that I'm going to cover for all these books, in addition to shipping, which usually is between $40 and $65 per book. So next up is Amazing Spider-Man number 194. This is the first appearance of the Black Cat, and both a newsstand edition sold as this one, as you can see here, as well as a direct edition. The newsstand sold for $2,972. That price is down about 10% from where this book sold last year. It's a great cover. This is from 1979. It shows the Black Cat there. I love the Black Cat. I would love to have this one in my collection. But this newsstand did sell for about 10% less than what it sold for just last month. And the direct edition sold for $2,188. That's about right. I've seen as high as $2,400 here recently, but this one did sell for a little bit lower than the newsstand, obviously, since there's less of those on the census. Next up is a great cover that features the Punisher. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 201 in a 9.8. This is from 1980. I believe this is the first team-up comic book between Spider-Man and the Punisher, and it's a great cover. Absolutely love that cover. This is by John Romita and Bob McLeod. Beautiful, beautiful book, and this one was the newsstand edition as well, so it's a little bit pricier, harder to find. That one sold for $413. I thought that was a pretty good buy. This one was going for between $500 and $550, so this one is down as well, but this is kind of the first team-up book, a secondary key. Next up is a big key. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 252 in the direct edition. This is the first appearance of the Black Cat, the black costume for Spider-Man, and it's an homage to Amazing Fantasy 15, which is the first comic book appearance of Spider-Man. So this is tied with Marvel Team Up number 141 for the first appearance. This one came out a little bit earlier, and obviously, given that it's the homage to Amazing Fantasy 15. It's going to go for bigger money than Marvel Team Up 141. This direct edition sold for $13.11. That too is also down from just last month when it was going for between $1,500 and $1,700, believe it or not, for the direct edition. So that was a really good buy in my mind. Next up, here's the newsstand for the same book. A little bit pricier, a little bit harder to find, the newsstand edition. As you can see, it's got the new CGC label that does mention it's the newsstand edition. That one sold for $17.25. That is a bargain price relative to where this one is selling. This one was going for between $2,200 and $2,400 just in the last few months. So to get that one for $17.25 versus the direct edition that sold for $13.11, I think both of those were actually really good pickups. I think the newsstand was actually the better buy at $17.25. Next up, this is an interesting one. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 275. It's definitely a secondary key. But what's unique about this one is that this is the Canadian price variant. So the Canadian newsstand edition. And, you know, it's kind of a battle between the Hobgoblin and Spider-Man. It's kind of the return of the Hobgoblin. I have the Hobgoblin's first comic book appearance in the direct edition, which is ASM 238. But I would love to have picked this one up to kind of match with that. This is the rare Canadian price variant, which is only one of 9 available. And this one sold for $210. I would have paid that all day long. I think that was a great pickup and one of the steals in this early batch of auctions that sold. Next up, we've got the newsstand edition of ASM 293, and this is the story involving Kraven. Obviously, if you haven't followed kind of pop culture, there is a Kraven movie that I think is coming out later this fall. It might have been pushed back because of the writer's strike. I'm not sure. It's going to be violent. It's going to be really violent. It's definitely an R-rated movie. It looks pretty awesome based on the trailer, but you never know. I mean, these secondary villain movies are hit or miss, but I'm looking forward to the Kraven movie as well as Madam Web. I think both of those have potential to be very good. I'm kind of in love with Sydney Sweeney, who is playing Spider-Woman in the Madam Web movie, and I've got to see it. I mean, that's a must-see. I'm a huge fanboy of Sydney Sweeney. She is quite attractive. She's very easy on the eyes, and I think Gal Gadot is also in the movie as well. So I'm looking forward to both of those movies. But this newsstand edition of ASM 293 sold for $211. That's a bargain price, given that the direct edition has been selling for around $175. So that's a really good price on that one. Next up, I've got an interesting story on this one. This is ASM 301, but this is the very, very difficult to find newsstand edition. And I was bidding on this one, not for me, but for a buddy of mine. And it was around $2,000 with about 3 seconds left in the auction. And my buddy really wanted it. He didn't have a ComicLink account, so I bid on it for him. He was going to pay me back. So I bid $3,600 with like 3 seconds left in the auction, and he still lost. It was at $2,000. I bid $3,600, and somebody still had a higher bid, and it sold for $3,700. So crazy amount of money, how much it jumped right at the last second. It went from $2,000 to $3,700 in 3 seconds, and he still lost it. So my buddy was a little bummed about it, but it is what it is. Not many of these in the newsstand edition for the ASM 301. It's another big book done by Todd McFarlane cover. Next up is the newsstand edition of ASM 316. This is the first true Venom comic book cover appearance. I have this one in the direct edition, but this is the harder to find newsstand. You can see the barcode there. This was before CGC started labeling it newsstand, so it's a little bit earlier label on that one. But that one sold for $10.18, which I thought was a great buy. This one usually has been hovering around $1,100 to $1,200. But this one in the newsstand did go for $10.18, another book that is down. If you're interested in this cover, this is the first true full cover appearance. I think it's ASM 299 where you see just his head. But ASM 316 is kind of when you first see his first full body on a comic book cover for ASM. So big book, and it's a Todd McFarlane cover. I love the book. I've got it in a direct edition, but that newsstand is pricey. That's a lot more expensive than what I paid for my direct edition. Next up is the newsstand edition for ASM 361. This is obviously a pretty timeless cover and the first comic book appearance of Carnage. And this is another book that's down right now. If you're going to get this book, don't bother with a direct edition. There are like thousands of 9.8s for the direct edition. And there's a lot for the newsstand as well, but I think that if you're going to get this book, definitely get the newsstand. That one sold for $513. That also is down. This one was kind of hovering between $575 and $600, but $513 for the newsstand edition, brand new case style, brand new label. That's a bargain. Next up, we've got Secret Wars number 8. This is the origin of the alien symbiote that makes the black costume for both Spider-Man and then obviously eventually Venom. And this is the direct edition. This is one that is kind of staying around the same price because the direct edition, there's a ton of them, an absolute ton of them on the census. So if you want it, it's pretty easy to find. Every single month almost, ComicLink has these in the direct edition. The newsstand goes for a lot more money, but this one sold for $680. That price is actually up a little bit. I've seen them selling for as low as like $580, and then they kind of creeped up last month to $625. Well, this one sold for $680, and a lot of it's tied to the colors and how well it's wrapped, because you do see a lot of these that are miswrapped. This one had pretty perfect centering, although maybe it was a little bit of an underwrap because the signature for the cover artist was kind of cut off there, but the colors on this one were particularly vibrant, and some of them have kind of faded colors. The red background can be kind of a faded color, but this one was pretty perfect, and it sold for a lot more money, $680. I still think that price is pretty fair, just given the colors on that one. Next up, New Mutants 98. This is the direct edition and the first appearance of Deadpool in comics. This is from 1991, a pretty famous Rob Liefeld key book from the 1990s, almost a must-have if you're a Deadpool fan. And this is another one that I would target right now. Despite Deadpool 3 on the way, coming out in theaters, this book is really flatlined. This book was kind of trading for between $1,600 and $1,700. This one sold for $1,450. That's the lowest price I've seen in a while on this book. So I think I would pick it up right now if you're into Deadpool. This is definitely on my short list. Next up, I've got some Batman books. This is Detective Comics number 523. This is the first cameo appearance of Killer Croc, who's one of my favorite villains within the Batman universe. He's not featured on the cover, but this has got Solomon Grundy on the cover. Beautiful colors. I love the bright oranges and reds to it. And you don't see this one pop up that much on ComicLink. So this was a 9.8, and it sold for $210. That's a bargain price. I was expecting this one to go for $275 or more. So that's a really good buy, though, and for an absolutely gorgeous cover. I adore this cover, and I've got to get it eventually. But fantastic cover, and it's the first cameo appearance of Killer Croc. The other Batman book I wanted to cover is Detective Comics number 880, a pretty famous jock cover for the Joker. And this one's kind of hovering in the same price point, but for between $400 and $450. This one sold for $419. That's about the going rate right now. It's a fairly modern book, and they come up fairly regularly. I've seen them on Heritage, I've seen them on eBay, and of course on ComicLink. So if you're into that cover, which I am, I think it's just one of those haunting pieces of cover art by Jock that it's a must-have if you're a Joker fan. I just love the art on that one. It's beautiful. $419 was a great price on that, though, I think. Next up, Incredible Hulk 340. This is another one that's creeping back up in price. It kind of hit a lull there for the last couple of months, and it was kind of $1,000 to $1,100 if you're lucky. But if it's got perfect centering and it's recently graded like this one was with a new label, it's got perfect colors to it. You can see the signature right here very clearly from McFarlane. This was the direct edition. It's almost impossible to find the newsstand for Hulk 340, but I've got this one in my collection already, but I was curious to see what this one would sell for, and this one did bump up a little bit. It sold for $13.81. Last month, a couple of them sold for between $11.75 and $12.50, so this one did jump up just a little bit, but I think it's a case where two collectors were bidding on it, and when you have a brand new case style for Hulk 340 plus perfect centering, perfect colors on it, you can't go wrong with it, and people are willing to bid up a little bit on that one. So $13.81 took that one home. Next up, we've got Wolverine Limited Series number 1. This is a book I've covered at length. Beautiful Frank Miller cover art, and this one was the direct edition. This is another book that's kind of flatlined around $600 to $650. This one sold for $630. There was another one that sold for $680. So this is kind of the first solo Wolverine comic, and pretty timeless cover art there by Frank Miller. So if you're looking for that one, this is another book that comes up every single month on ComicLink, as well as on eBay, but you're going to get a better deal on ComicLink in my mind. So $6.30 for that one. Goodbye. Next up, Ultimate Fallout 4 in the first print in a CGC 9.8. It's got the first appearance of Miles Morales, Spider-Man, and I love Miles. The two Spider-Verse movies were incredible. I just saw the second one in the theaters, and it's probably, quite honestly, the best animated superhero movie I've ever seen, if not the best animated movie, period, I've ever seen in the theater. Absolutely amazing book. I've got the second print, but I don't have the first print. And as I've talked about in the past, I was kind of waiting for it to hit around $1,400. That was kind of my target price. This one sold for $1,550. Last month, they were going for as high as $1,800. So it's coming back down in price slowly. And this is one of my target lists for this fall. If it'll drop just maybe another 10% or so, I'll pull the trigger on that one. But that's a beautiful book. Next up, we've got Legend of Zelda #1. This one is the direct edition and the there is a no price variant that's a lot more expensive. This one clearly here, it's got the price variant in the upper right-hand corner. This one goes for a little bit less than the no price variant. But this was a beautiful book in a 9.8 grade, and it sold for $13.05, which I thought was a great buy. The no price variant can go for almost $2,000 now. I've seen this exact book sell for as high as $1,600 recently, so I think $13.05 was a great buy. Finally, I've got Uncanny X-Men #145, and this is not like a big key. This is kind of a secondary key. It's just got great cover art by with Dr. Doom on there. And if you'll remember from a recent Star Wars comic book video, there is a Darth Vader #1, a 1 in 25 Mark Brooks variant that is an homage to this book. So I would love to pick up this one along with the Darth Vader #1 Brooks cover variant and have both of them side by side. But this one's a very affordable book, and this one is still going right now. Actually, this one has not closed. Right now, the current bid on it is $45. I expect it to go for about $250 or so. So if you guys like this content, let me know, and I'll do a part 2 once this book and a few others sell on ComicLink, and I'll do kind of a part 2 video later this month. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.